The soft-spoken woman in the wrong-roomed grand ballroom of the Celestia estate shimmered under the golden chandeliers, their crystals catching the light like stars trapped indoors. The floor was polished marble, smooth enough to reflect the towering arrangements of white orchids and flickering candles set along the walls. It was a night designed to dazzle. It's a kind of night where names mattered more than kindness, and the way you spoke said more than what you said. In the center of this carefully curated world stood a woman who didn't belong. She had soft, thoughtful eyes. Her posture was unsure, like a tourist who had stepped into the wrong part of town but didn't want to admit it. Her dress was pale blue, cotton clean, modest, with creases still visible from the suitcase she had unpacked just a few hours earlier. She didn't wear jewelry. Her shoes were simple flats bought from a market stall. She carried a plain brown purse that hung from her shoulder like it weighed more than it should. Her name was Amelia. She was from a small village in the south of France, and she had never been to a place like this before. Her invitation had arrived by mistake. She had come to the city only 3 days ago with her husband, who told her to take a break, to explore, to breathe. He had kissed her hand gently and said he would catch up with her in a few days. He often disappeared on sudden business trips, but he always returned with stories that made her laugh until she cried. She didn't ask questions. She trusted him. She found the cream-colored envelope waiting at the front desk of her hotel. It was addressed to Madame E. Dorrant, which matched the name she gave when booking the room. She assumed it was part of the hotel's service, perhaps a local event, maybe a cultural exhibition. She was excited. She had never been invited to anything formal, so she put on her best dress-only dress. Rillian followed the address to the Celestia estate. But now, standing under the cruel glow of chandeliers, she began to understand. This wasn't for her. The women around her sparkled like glass sculptures. Diamonds rested like snowflakes on their necks and wrists. Their laughter was sharp and polished, bouncing off walls like expensive perfume. The men wore suits tailored to perfection, each one talking louder than the other as if volume was a badge of success. They all had one thing in common. They didn't see her. Or rather, they didn't want to, until she walked near the silent auction table. The moment she leaned over the glass-top table, trying to understand what starting bid, 70,000, meant, a voice behind her laughed not kindly. "Sweetheart," a woman said, her tone sticky with false concern. "You're going to smudge the glass." Amelia looked up. The woman was tall, wearing a golden silk dress that hugged her like it was designed just for her. She had lips painted the color of blood and nails like red arrows. Amelia smiled gently. "Sorry," she said, stepping back. "I didn't mean to know." "No, it's adorable," another woman chimed in. "You're just browsing, trying your luck maybe?" "It's always good to dream," the first one said, tapping her clutch purse. "Though some dreams are meant to stay dreams." "No," Amelia nodded politely, unsure of the rules here. Her cheeks flushed. She tried to leave the table, but her dress caught the corner of a gold-trimmed placard, pulling it off balance. To the ground, the sound was louder than it should have been. Heads turned. "Oh dear," said one of the women with a hand over her chest. "Was that you?" Amelia bent to pick it up. "I'm so sorry, they usually charge for damage." "Don't they?" one of the men said from behind, chuckling into his champagne glass. "Well, I suppose she can wash dishes in the back to pay it off." The room bloomed with quiet laughter. Amelia froze. She felt her ears burning. The floor beneath her seemed to shift, the shining marble suddenly unfamiliar and cold. She stood up slowly, still holding the placard. She wanted to put it back, but her hands trembled. "Here," said a young woman from the side, holding out her hand. She wore a black velvet dress and looked no older than 20. She smiled, not mockingly, but not warmly either. "Let me help." Amelia gave her the placard silently. Her lips were too tight to smile. "I don't think she understands." Someone whispered nearby, "She's not one of us." "Definitely not." Amelia turned to walk away, her steps slow and deliberate. She didn't want them to see her hurrying. She reached for the nearest door, unsure if it was the exit or just another part of the mansion, but anything was better than standing still. Her eyes were glassy. Her chest felt tight. She wasn't angry, not exactly. was something worse. A quiet, heavy sadness that made her feel smaller than she had in years. She found herself in a quiet hallway, lined with old portraits and velvet-covered benches. No one followed. The noise of the ballroom faded behind her. She sat on the nearest bench and tried to breathe. This wasn't the life she knew. In her village, people shared bread and stories. They helped each other build fences and fix leaking roofs. They knew each other's names, and no one cared what shoes you wore. There was a softness to life there, a patience. She hadn't realized how far from it she had come until now. And yet she had been invited, hadn't she? Or was it all a mistake? Just then, she heard footsteps. A man in a white jacket and black trousers walked briskly toward her. He looked like staff, maybe a waiter or coordinator. Madame Durant. He asked. Amelia stood, startled. Yes. You left your bidding paddle at the front desk, he said, handing her a thin wooden board with the number 184. The auction is about to begin. Bidding? She blinked. I think there's a mistake. Oh, he smiled. You're the guest of Mr. Durant. Yes. Amelia froze. Yes, she said softly. But then it's no mistake. Your name's on the list? He made the arrangements. He gave her a polite nod. This way, please. The live auction is beginning. She didn't know what to say. Her hands were suddenly cold, gripping the paddle like it was a weapon she didn't know how to use as she followed him back toward the grand room. Her heart pounded. Why would her husband do this? He knew she hated crowds. He knew she didn't understand this. World and Lessa thought passed through her mind like a shadow. What if he had done this on purpose? What if he wanted her to be seen? But by whom? As they returned to the ballroom, she noticed the room had changed. Chairs were now arranged in rows facing a small, elevated platform. At the center stood an auctioneer, thin and gray-haired. With a voice sharp enough to cut glass, Amelia sat near the back. The red-dressed woman from before turned slightly, smirking. Oh, look, she whispered loudly to her friend. Back. Maybe she's bidding on that antique mirror. She can hang it in her broom closet. Amelia looked down at her paddle. She had no idea how it worked. Was she supposed to raise it? What if she accidentally bought something? And now, the auctioneer said, raising his hand, a very special item. A diamond choker once worn by Queen Isabel of Spain. Starting bid. 100,000. Was silence. Then a paddle went up. Then another, and another. Amelia watched, stunned, as the numbers climbed. 150. The auctioneer called. Do I have 170? A woman raised her paddle lazily. 170. Do I have 200? The room held its breath. And then, as if on instinct, Amelia's hand twitched. Her paddle rose slightly. She realized it too late. Paddle 184, the auctioneer barked. 200. Gasps. All eyes turned. Amelia's hand dropped. Instantly, her mouth opened. Wait, no, I didn't. 200 from 184, the auctioneer continued, unfazed. Do I have to 10? Nobody moved. The red-dressed woman twisted in her seat to stare directly at Amelia. Her eyes narrowed. Her mouth curled. No one else bid. Going once, the auctioneer said. Going twice. Amelia's pulse thundered. Sold. To paddle 184. Burst of polite applause. Amelia felt like she was sinking into the floor. She had just bid 200,000 on a necklace. 200,000 what? Dollars? Euros? It didn't matter. She couldn't afford even a tenth of that, not even close. A man approached her seat. Congratulations, he said, handing her a small velvet box and a slip of paper. Please confirm payment at the front before you leave. Amelia took the box with shaking hands. The paper was heavy, formal, expensive. It listed her winning bid. It also had the name of the bank. She was expected to transfer the funds. She swallowed hard, and that's when someone at the front of the room stood up. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, his tie a deep navy. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were fixed only on her. The murmurs began instantly. Who is that? Isn't that? Amelia turned. Her eyes met his, and her heart dropped. It was him. Her husband, and what he said next silenced the entire room. The man no one expected, the room fell silent the moment he stepped forward. It wasn't just because of his tailored suit, or the quiet authority in his stride, or even the way his eyes moved with sharp precision across the faces now frozen in. Stunned disbelief. It was the way the atmosphere changed, how the temperature in the room seemed to drop by a few degrees as all attention shifted toward the man who had just spoken. He wasn't loud. He didn't need to be. His presence spoke. Louder than words, Amelia sat frozen, her eyes locked on him. Her fingers still held the thin velvet box and the payment slip, both suddenly heavy in her lap. She didn't understand what was happening. Moments ago, she had felt like the smallest person in the room. Now every person around her was leaning forward, whispering, gasping. Who is he? Someone hissed near the front. I think he owns the auction house. No, he's a private investor, isn't he? Isn't that Amelia's husband? But no one truly knew. Not yet. He took another step forward, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't look left or right. He didn't acknowledge the murmurs, nor the looks that danced between awe and suspicion. He was focused only on one thing. Amelia. Ladies. And gentlemen, he said, in a voice smooth as silk, but sharp as a blade, I believe there has been some confusion. The auctioneer, clearly unsure how to respond, shifted uncomfortably on the stage. Sir, may I ask? I am here for my wife, the man said, cutting through the tension like a knife through ice. And I believe some of you may have forgotten your manners. Gasps rippled through the crowd again. Amelia's breath caught. He walked directly toward her now, ignoring the way the crowd parted to let him pass like water around a ship. He reached her row, and without a word, extended his hand. His eyes softened only when they met hers. She stood slowly. Their fingers touched, and something inside her steadied. You shouldn't be here, she whispered, her voice nearly breaking. I didn't mean to. I thought it was an invitation. From the hotel I didn't know this. Place I made a fool of myself. He leaned close, his hand gently cupping the side of her face. No, he said softly. They should be ashamed, not you. She blinked, confused. What are you? But before she could finish, he turned to face the crowd again. My name is Alex Durant, he said. I own Durant Industries, and I'm one of the 3 principal investors behind tonight's auction. A stunned silence filled the room. Some mouths opened. A few hands instinctively clapped, then stopped, unsure if it was the right time. Amelia's knees wobbled. Alex continued, his voice unshaken. This auction was organized for a purpose. To raise funds for orphaned children in remote communities across South America and Southeast Asia. It's causes that many of you clapped for earlier with rehearsed smiles and champagne glasses held high. Eyes swept across the room. Not angry, not loud. It's deeply, painfully honest. And yet, the moment a woman entered this room who didn't fit your narrow image of wealth or status, you turned on her. You whispered, you laughed, you mocked her. Sharp inhale came from the front row. Some of you, he said, his gaze now piercing, treated her like furniture, invisible when she arrived, suddenly amusing when she made a mistake, and completely disposable when she didn't defend herself. Amelia stood beside him, her eyes wide. She didn't know this version of him. It's not like this. She knew him as the quiet man who read books at night and made tea when she was sick. Not this storm of calm power. Alex stepped forward again. I've attended hundreds of auctions in my life. I've seen billionaires bid simply to outdo each other, without caring what the item was. But tonight I saw something far more valuable. Paused. His hand gently took the velvet box from Amelia. He held it up. My wife, he said, unintentionally placed the highest bid on this choker. She didn't understand the system. She didn't raise her paddle to win. And yet, without meaning to, she proved that value doesn't come from loud voices or expensive shoes. It comes from quiet courage, from kindness, from choosing not to retaliate when you are insulted. The audience sat perfectly still. The women who had mocked Amelia earlier stared ahead blankly, their faces pale. So Alex said, his voice now like steel wrapped in velvet, I will honor her bid. Not because she has to, but because I choose to. I will double it as a donation. Because tonight, this woman reminded me what true elegance looks like. A beat of silence passed. Then someone began to clap. It was hesitant at first, then another. And then more soon, the room was filled with applause. Not loud and frenzied, but steady, meaningful. The kind of applause that tried desperately to hide its own guilt. Amelia stood in stunned silence, her hand still in Alex's. The red-dressed woman who had laughed at her earlier now looked down at her lap, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The young woman in black velvet whispered something to her friend, who only shook her head in shame. Alex leaned in and whispered, You don't have to stay, my love. I can take you home. But Amelia shook her head slowly. No, she said softly. Not yet. He looked at her with quiet pride. Are you sure? She nodded. I need to see how this ends. They walked together toward the back of the room where refreshments were being served. The staff, who had mostly stayed silent throughout the drama, now stood a little straighter, offering shy smiles and sudden attentiveness. People approached them, some awkwardly apologizing, others offering compliments that rang hollow. But Amelia stayed gracious. She didn't lash out. She didn't seek revenge. She simply listened, smiled, faintly, and thanked them, because that's how she had been raised. You don't fight cruelty with more cruelty. You simply prove that it cannot shake you. Later that night, in the black town car that carried them away from the estate, Alex reached for her hand again. I should have told you who I was here, he said quietly. I didn't think it would matter. I just wanted you to enjoy yourself, to feel free. She looked out the window. The lights of the city blurred like tears across glass. I did feel free, she whispered, until they reminded me I wasn't like them. Alex's voice was low. They reminded you. And then you reminded them who you are. She turned to look at him. Who am I, Alex? He smiled gently. You're the woman they'll remember long after the diamonds have lost their shine. The car drove on, quiet and smooth. But just as they were about to reach the hotel, Alex's phone buzzed. He checked it. His expression shifted slightly. What is it? Amelia asked. He hesitated, then showed her the screen. A message from his assistant, urgent, the woman in red. She's connected to one of your silent competitors. You may have walked into a trap. Amelia felt her pulse skip. A trap? But before she could ask anything else, the driver suddenly slowed down, then stopped. They weren't at the hotel. They were in an unfamiliar street. Dimly lit, Alex, she whispered. Where are we? He looked out the window slowly. And that's when he saw it, a black SUV blocking the road, ahead, and another pulling in behind them. He reached for Amelia's hand again, but this time his grip was tight. Something was very wrong. Whispers in the dark street was too quiet, too still, kind of silence that didn't belong in a city that never really slept. Streetlights flickered overhead, their light dim and patchy, casting long shadows across the narrow road. The driver's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel, his breathing shallow and nervous. Amelia sat frozen in the back seat, her heart racing like it was trying to break free from her chest. Alex didn't speak. He didn't panic. But she saw it, the shift in his posture, the sudden alertness in his eyes. He knew this wasn't random. Ahead of them, the black SUV remained unmoving, its engine humming like a quiet threat. Behind them, the second vehicle now blocked any path of retreat. Two men in dark jackets stepped out from the front vehicle, their movements calm and deliberate. Too calm, Alex's hand reached for the door, not to open it, but to lock it. Don't move, he said, his voice low and controlled. Not yet. Amelia could barely breathe. What do they want? Alex didn't answer right away. He was calculating, watching, thinking. His eyes darted to the side mirror, then to the driver. Don't say a word, he murmured. Wait. The driver gave a slight nod, sweat beginning. To beat at his temple, stay calm, Alex said again, this time to Amelia. Whatever happens, stay next to me. Amelia's hands gripped the edge of the leather seat. Her mind was racing, trying to understand. This evening had gone from surreal to terrifying in the blink of an eye. She wasn't used to danger. She was used to flowers and fresh bread and quiet mornings. Not black SUVs and strange men with unreadable eyes. One of the men approached the driver's window. He tapped on the glass. The driver looked at Alex in the rearview mirror. Waiting for direction, Alex leaned forward slightly and gave a single nod. The window rolled down an inch. "Evening," the man said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're blocking the road." "So are you," the driver replied. The man chuckled. "Fair enough. But I'm not the one being followed." The word hung heavy in the air. Followed. Amelia's eyes snapped to Alex. He remained calm, though she could see the tension building in his jaw. "What do you want?" said speaking. Through the small gap in the glass, the man bent slightly, trying to peer into the back seat. "Just a little chat. 5 minutes. Nothing dramatic." Alex's voice was cold. "My wife is with me." The man smiled wider. "Even better. She should hear this too." Alex looked to the driver again, unlocked the doors. Amelia grabbed his arm. "What?" "No, Alex." He squeezed her hand tightly. "Trust me." The door locks clicked open. Slowly, Alex stepped out of the car. Amelia hesitated, then followed, her legs shaking beneath her. The air outside was cool and smelled faintly of engine oil and distant rain. The man gestured toward the sidewalk. "Let's not stand in the middle of the street like amateurs. Over here." They walked together in silence. The second man stood a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes scanning the surroundings. Clearly, he was there for muscle. The first one, though, was the talker. The one who knew exactly what he was doing. "You made quite a scene tonight," he began, glancing at Amelia. "Your speech, your little performance, very moving." Alex didn't respond. "But see, that necklace wasn't supposed to go to you," the man continued. "We had someone planted, someone who was meant to win it." "Why?" Alex asked. Sharply, the man grinned. "Let's just say it contained something we needed. Something tucked behind one of the gems. You interrupted that plan." Amelia blinked. "What are you talking about?" The man ignored her. "Your wife's accidental bid?" "Yeah, it wasn't so accidental after all. Someone nudged her paddle, subtle, almost invisible. The whole room was being watched." Alex's eyes darkened. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" The man shrugged. "Do you really think your enemies sit in boardrooms wearing suits all day? Some of them play dirty, some of them play smart, and some of them, they put things inside antique jewelry and let the highest bidder carry them out of the country." Amelia clutched the box tighter in her hands, as if it had suddenly grown heavier. "What do you want?" Alex asked. "Simple," the man said, reaching into his coat. Amelia tensed, but he only pulled out a small folded envelope. He held it out to Alex. Alex took it cautiously inside. The man said, "Is an address. Go there, alone. Tomorrow. Morning. No police, no security, just you. If you don't, well, things get complicated." He turned to Amelia. Lovely dress, by the way. Humble, charming. Alex stepped forward suddenly, his eyes blazing. "If you touch her, relax," the man said, stepping back with both hands raised. "We're not animals, just businessmen." With that, the men returned to their vehicles. A few seconds later, both SUVs reversed away into the dark, leaving behind the heavy silence of the street. Amelia turned to Alex, her voice shaking. "What was that? What's in the necklace?" Alex was already opening the box. He took out the choker, holding it carefully in both hands. It glittered innocently under the strap. He turned it over. There, beneath the largest central gem, was a slight irregularity, a small ridge. "This doesn't belong," he muttered. He pressed on it gently. The gem loosened and popped open like a lid inside. Embedded deep in the hollow center was a tiny rolled scroll. Metallic, no longer than his finger. Amelia stared in disbelief. "What is it?" "I don't know," Alex said. "But someone was willing to send a threat for it." Back in the car, Amelia sat silently while Alex made a call. He spoke in short, coded phrases. Whoever was on the other end responded calmly. He hung up after a few minutes and turned to her. "I'm taking you somewhere safe," he said. "No," she replied. He frowned. "Amelia, this is serious." "Exactly," she said, her voice stronger now. "I'm not leaving your side." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. They arrived at a private residence tucked behind high stone walls and guarded gates. Alex entered a code, and the gates opened slowly. The mansion inside wasn't grand like the auction estate. It was quieter, warmer, more private. Once inside, Amelia watched as Alex opened a drawer in the study, pulling out a small scanner. He held the metal scroll over it. Lights flickered. Data flashed across a small screen. "Coordinates," he murmured. "Encrypted files? Possibly tracking data?" "Tracking?" Amelia echoed. "Not just that. This is military grade. Stolen tech. It shouldn't exist." He looked up at her. "We're in deeper than I thought." And then, before either of them could speak again, the front door exploded open. Glass shattered. Smoke filled the air. Amelia screamed, "Alex!" Pulled her down behind the desk as footsteps stormed into the house. Masked figures. Armed someone yelled. "Find the woman." Amelia's blood went cold. This wasn't about the necklace anymore now. It was about her. The secret she never knew. The blast had come like thunder loud. Sudden and world-shifting glass and smoke danced in the air. A cruel fog swallowing the calm of the private home that had just moments ago felt like a safe haven. Amelia lay, curled behind the heavy wooden desk, her ears ringing, lungs aching from the sharp scent of explosives. Alex was beside her, one arm around her, the other holding something small and black, a concealed weapon. Drawn with the speed of a man who had seen danger too many times before. The house wasn't large, but it had been built like a fortress. In disguise, there were panic buttons in the walls, bullet-resistant windows, secret escape routes hidden behind bookcases. None of that seemed to matter now, not when masked men were already inside, yelling through the smoke, barking orders. Bootsteps hammering the floor like war drums. Find the woman. Amelia felt her heart twist. Her. They weren't just here for the necklace anymore. They were here for her. Alex pulled her close, whispering into her ear, "Stay low. Stay behind me, no matter what." She nodded, even as panic threatened to drown her. His fingers found a hidden button under the edge of the desk. Faint click followed, and part of the floor behind them slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel beneath the wood. Without hesitation, he helped her down first, then followed, sealing the hatch above them with one final press. They were in darkness. The tunnel was tight, barely wide enough for them to crawl side by side. Amelia's breathing was shaky, her shoulders brushing the cool stone walls as they moved. Dust coated her palms. Her knees ached with every shift forward, but she didn't stop. Behind them, muffled shouts and footsteps echoed closer, but not close enough. "How did they find us?" she whispered, voice trembling. "They're professionals," Alex replied quietly. "They don't guess. They follow signals. Someone's feeding them information. Someone close to you. Maybe. Or maybe something worse." They reached the end of the tunnel after what felt like forever. Alex opened a hidden panel, and they emerged into a garage. 3 luxury cars lined the space. But Alex led her to the least flashy one, a dark gray sedan with no brand markings, no traceable identifiers. He drove fast. City lights flickered past in streaks. The silence between them was tense, filled with things neither wanted to say yet. Finally, Amelia broke it. "Alex," she asked slowly, "who are you?" He didn't glance at her, but he sighed deep, weary. The kind of sigh that said the truth had been waiting a long time to be told. "You know most of it," he began, voice low. "I told you I built my business from scratch. That's true. What I didn't tell you is how." He turned onto a quieter road away from the city's main lights. "I was recruited when I was 23. Not into a company, into an agency. Private one. Global. Powerful. We worked on surveillance, Technology, asset recovery, sometimes removal. Removal, she asked, already afraid of the answer. People, he admitted. The ones. Considered too dangerous to be left alone. Amelia's hand covered her mouth. But I left that life, he continued. I walked away, built something clean, something real, met you. And you became the only part of my life that had nothing to do with secrets. She stared at him. But now it does. His jaw clenched. Yes. He parked the car in front of a quiet stone chapel nestled between two hills. It was old, with ivy crawling up the sides and a steeple that had seen better years. Amelia didn't understand why they were here until he led her around back and pulled open a rusted metal door hidden under a thick layer of vines. They stepped inside. Beneath. The chapel was a room filled with old equipment monitors, servers, boxes of classified-looking files. It looked like a forgotten bunker. Amelia had never seen anything like it. What is this place? She asked, an old fallback point. Not many know about it, he said. We're safe here, for now. He turned on a monitor, inserted the scroll they had retrieved from the necklace into a scanning unit. The screen lit up. Streams of encrypted data appeared. Alex worked fast, fingers flying across the keyboard. Amelia sat down, her hands still shaking. She tried to process everything: the attack, the threat, the necklace, the truth about her husband. And then she asked the question that had been clawing at her ever since the masked man had spoken. Why do they want me? Alex froze. The clicking stopped. He turned toward her slowly, and then he said something that felt like a crack splitting her entire world apart. Because you're not just my wife. Her voice broke. What does that mean? He sat beside her, taking her hand gently. Amelia, do you remember the story you told me? About your mother? How she worked in a laboratory in Berlin? How she died in a fire? She whispered. That wasn't a fire, he said. It was a cover-up. And she didn't just work in a lab. She was one of the few people in the world who had access to something called Project Ian, a system capable of tracking movement across global satellite networks in real time. She was working on it secretly, under the protection of a now-defunct European agency. Amelia's lips parted, eyes wide. No, she was just a scientist. She hated politics. That's why they trusted her, he said. They believed she wouldn't sell it. She didn't, but someone tried to take it. When she refused, she died for it. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. Amelia, your mother encoded something into that system. Biometric access, locked by DNA. He paused. Your DNA. Her stomach dropped. They need you to unlock it. She stood up suddenly, her voice trembling with disbelief. No, this isn't real. This is something from a movie. Not ... important. I bake. I read books. I live quietly. I don't know anything about ... any of this. Alex rose slowly too, hands raised gently, carefully. I know. But it doesn't matter anymore. They think you are. They'll keep coming. She shook her head, pacing. You knew all this? How long? Since Berlin, he admitted. But I never wanted to tell you. I thought if I protected you, if we kept a low life, you lied to me. He didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He just stood there. Letting the silence speak, the guilt, he said. Amelia sat down slowly, wiping her tears. So what now? She whispered. He walked over, placing something on the table. It was a small vial. This is a decoy, he said. We'll make them think they got what they wanted. We'll buy time. Amelia looked up at him. What if it doesn't work? The voice was soft. Then we run. And if they find us again? He looked into her eyes. Then I'll die before I let them take you. A moment of silence passed between them, and then the monitor behind him blinked. A message appeared. Location. Traced. Hostiles. En route. Estimated arrival. 6 minutes. Amelia stood up slowly. 6 minutes. Alex turned pale. He reached for the decoy and tucked it into a steel case. We move now. But as they reached the door, a voice came through the hidden. Intercom.female.com? Amelia. I suggest you listen closely. If you don't come with us, we will detonate the secondary device hidden in the auction house tonight. There are still people inside. Amelia gasped. They planted a bomb? One word from you, and we'll disarm it. But only if you come now. Alone. The intercom went silent. Alex looked at her. Don't listen. It's a bluff. Amelia's heart ached. But what if it's not? He grabbed her shoulders. You're not going? They'll kill innocent people. They're manipulating you. But if they're not, she said quietly, how can I live with that? She turned, walked toward the door. Alex reached out to stop her, but she was already gone outside. Outside. The night waited like a loaded question. The woman they underestimated night outside was colder than it had been earlier. Wind whispered through the trees as if the earth itself knew something terrible was about to happen. The gravel beneath Amelia's feet crunched quietly with every step. She didn't look back, not because she wasn't afraid, but because if she did, she knew Alex would still be standing in the doorway, his eyes pleading, his hands ready to pull her back inside. And if she saw that, she wouldn't have the strength to keep walking. But she had made her choice. Somewhere across the city, there could be a bomb. And somewhere near this chapel bunker, there were people waiting to collect her, not because they cared who she was, not because they respected what she felt, but because they needed what she carried in her blood. She reached the edge of the clearing. 2 black cars stood parked side by side. The rear doors opened automatically. 2 men stood beside them, dressed in dark suits, earpieces tucked neatly, hands folded in front of them like well-trained machines. But it was the third figure that made her stop mid-step. A woman dressed in a long cream coat and high heels that didn't seem to sink into the earth like they should have. Her hair was tied back tightly, her eyes sharp and calculating. You must be Amelia, she said, stepping forward. Her voice was calm, accentless, almost sterile. I see now why he kept you hidden? Amelia didn't answer. Don't worry, the woman continued, her smile thin. You did the right thing. Many wouldn't have. It takes courage to sacrifice. For others, to choose strangers over yourself. There's no bomb, is there? Amelia asked quietly. The woman's expression didn't change. Would it matter if there was? Amelia's fists clenched slightly. Yes, because it means you're not just thieves. You're murderers. The woman chuckled. Words like thief or murderer are flexible. Depends which side of history you're standing on. The men stepped aside, gesturing to the open door. You're not going to cuff me? Amelia asked. Not unless you try to run, the woman said. Besides, you're not a prisoner. You're a key. Those words chilled Amelia more than anything else. A key. It's not a person. Just a way to unlock something they wanted. She climbed into the car, the doors. They drove in silence for nearly 30 minutes, past quiet highways and into a more industrial part of the city. Abandoned buildings loomed like skeletons of forgotten ambition. Graffiti marked the walls. Windows were shattered. But tucked behind all that decay was a structure that looked new, clean, unmarked, with no signs of what it was or who it belonged. 2 inside. The halls were cold and white. The woman led her down a corridor that seemed too quiet for how many doors lined it. Eventually, they entered a small room. There was a chair, a screen, a small table with a strange-looking scanner. Sit, the woman said gently. You won't be hurt. Just need a blood sample. Amelia stared at the chair. Why do you need this system? She asked. Project Ian? What do you want to do with it? The woman tilted her head. So many questions. You really are different. Just answer, Amelia said. Please. The woman leaned against the wall. Imagine a system that can track anyone, anywhere, based on the smallest heat signature. Imagine knowing where every world leader is at all times. Imagine watching oil shipments, secret military movements, or even small rebellions before they begin. Imagine power without limits. Would you say no to that? Amelia felt sick. Yes, the woman's eyes hardened slightly. Then you're not as clever as I hoped? 2 technicians entered, quiet, expressionless. One carried a needle. The other prepared the scanner. Amelia sat. The needle pierced her skin, drawing a small vial of blood. The scanner lit up as the blood was loaded into the system. Now, the woman said, we wait. But Amelia was watching something else, a red light blinking on the far corner of the scanner. Something she remembered from her childhood, her mother's lab. That red light didn't mean loading, it meant failure. The machine was rejecting her blood. That's odd, one technician said. Try another sample. They drew more. Same result, the woman stepped forward now, tension rising in her shoulders. What's wrong? Biometric rejection, one of the techs replied. The system isn't recognizing her as a primary user. Amelia blinked. What does that mean? She asked. It means, the woman said slowly, either your mother tricked us, or you're not the key. Panic surged through the room, but Amelia stood slowly, and this time she smiled. A quiet, tired smile. I'm not the key, she said. I'm the lock. The woman froze. Amelia's voice didn't shake now. My mother knew you'd come one day. She knew you'd find me, so she didn't give me access. She built a failsafe. The only way the system works, if I activate it willingly. The scanner began to shut down on its own. Lights flickered, screens went dark. Panic turned to shouting, and then the lights in the entire facility cut out pitch blackness in the chaos. Amelia moved. She remembered the route they took in. She remembered the turns, and more. Importantly, she remembered what Alex had told her once, in a quiet moment under the stars. You're more than you think you are, not just meant for soft things in quiet places. You have fire too. It's just waiting for the right moment. She ran through the dark. Alarms blared now. Backup generators kicked in. Red lights bathed the halls, but she didn't stop. She reached a fire exit, slammed it open. The night air hit her like a slap, cold and real and full of breath. She ran into the alley. Heart thudding like a war drum, a car pulled up, tires screeched, the door flung open. Alex's face was pale, eyes wide with relief. Get in. She dove inside. They sped off as shouts echoed behind them. Amelia was shaking. How? Did you find me? She gasped. Your necklace, he said. I slipped a tracker inside the clasp. I knew they'd take you somewhere. I just didn't think you'd escape on your own. She looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. I remembered what you said, she whispered, about the fire in me. He reached over, holding her hand tightly. And you set the whole world on fire tonight. But it wasn't over yet, because as they drove away, Amelia's phone buzzed. A blocked number. She answered it slowly. A voice-cold female spoke. You think you've won. Oh, this isn't over. You may have destroyed the access point. But your mother didn't just build one lock. She built 3. And now we know, where the second one is. The line went dead. Amelia stared into the darkness ahead. The war had just begun. The fire she becameth, road stretched on endlessly ahead. Empty and dark, winding through the countryside like a scar through the earth. Light sliced through the blackness, illuminating patches of tall grass and fences long forgotten. In the back seat of the car, Amelia sat quietly, her breathing steady now. Though her thoughts were anything but. Beside her, Alex drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding a small, secured box, the failed biometric scanner they had stolen. During their escape, it was now just a piece of useless metal, but to the people who had hunted them, it had been everything, and yet wasn't over. Her mother had left behind more than just a system. It's more than one lock. The woman's voice still echoed in Amelia's head. There are 3. And now they knew where the second was. Amelia turned to Alex. Where are we going? He didn't answer at first. Then finally he said, Vienna? She blinked. Austria. He nodded. Your mother's last funded project was based there? On paper, it was a cultural foundation. In reality, it was the site of a secondary vault. Years ago, your mother and her closest colleagues realized that no single access point was safe, so they divided everything into pieces. 3 biological locks. Yours is the first. The second is buried beneath the Altenburg Institute in Vienna. Amelia stared out the window, the distant stars blurred by movement, and the third, Lex, hesitated. No one knows, not even me. Your mother left no trace of it. It's like she wanted it lost forever unless every condition was met. Amelia was silent for a moment, her voice low when she spoke. She was trying to keep something. Dangerous from the world, yes, Alex said softly. And she trusted you to guard the first key. Amelia smiled sadly. I didn't even know who I was until last night. You've always known, he said. You just didn't know why. They arrived in Vienna 2 days later, after crossing borders with forged identities and switching vehicles multiple times. It was raining when they stepped into the shadow of the Altenburg Institute. A stone-walled relic nestled between modern buildings. It looked harmless, like a forgotten library, eh? But Alex had walked these halls before, years ago, when it was still active inside. It was cold, hollow. The scent of old paper and rust lingered in the air. They descended a narrow staircase behind. A false bookshelf, then through a hidden door, marked with the insignia of a phoenix, Amelia's mother's personal symbol, beneath the institute. In a steel chamber, surrounded by inactive security systems, they found it, a second scanner. And beside it, a small framed photo. A woman Amelia had seen before once, long ago, tall, pale skin. Kind smile. That's Isabel, Alex whispered. Your mother's partner, her most trusted friend. So Isabel is the second lock? Amelia asked. She was. Alex stepped forward, pulling a panel open beneath the scanner. A list of identifiers appeared on a screen: fingerprint, voice print, retina, and genetic key. One of them was marked deceased. Amelia felt her stomach twist. Isabel is gone? Yes, Alex said, but there's still hope. If the biometric data was preserved, it can still trigger the second lock. He moved swiftly, connecting a portable drive to the panel. Data streamed in. Alex's hands flew across the keyboard, bypassing outdated firewalls and recovering fragments of stored identities. Behind him, Amelia stood silently, her eyes on the photo of her mother's friend, and then success. The screen blinked. Secondary lock, Validita chamber. In the wall hissed open. Inside was a black box, far smaller than Amelia expected. Alex opened. A single thin chip lay inside, shimmering under the light. This is it, he said. The second piece of Ian, still encrypted. But before they could even celebrate the moment, sound echoed through the hallway above. Voices, boots, guns being cocked. Amelia's pulse spiked. They're here. Alex snapped the box shut and handed it to her. We have to move. We can't. Get this. They took the back tunnel out of the chamber, racing through dust-choked corridors and old elevator shafts until they emerged behind the institute's garden wall. It was still raining. The ground was slick, the sky dark and unforgiving. But they kept running. Behind them, gunfire cracked like thunder. Alex pulled her into a hidden path. They climbed a hill, vaulted a small stone fence, and reached the back alley where their car had been left. But it was gone, burned, its frame still smoking. Alex stared, jaw tight. They're ahead of us. Amelia looked around. She could hear engines approaching, and then something inside her broke open, not in fear, but in resolve. Give me the chip, she said suddenly. Alex turned to her. What? Give it to me. They don't want you. They want the keys. I'm the first. This chip is the second. I'll lead them away. You find the third? No, Alex said. We stay together. If we stay together, they'll kill us both. If I go alone, they'll chase me on. They'll believe they have everything. You're not doing this, he said, gripping her arms. I already am. Amelia, Alex, she said, tears in her eyes, but voice calm. I love you. But this isn't just about us. It never was. He held her for a moment, the rain washing over them both, and then silently. He handed her the chip. She ran down the alley, into the night, with no map, no protection. Just the storm and the weight of the world in her pocket. They followed. Black vans, drones overhead, voices yelling in a dozen languages. But she didn't stop, because this was no longer a story about a simple woman being mocked in a room she didn't belong to. This was about a woman they never saw coming. A woman raised by quiet strength. A woman who carried her mother's legacy in her bones. A woman who no longer needed saving. She led them into the old district of Vienna, where alleys twisted like puzzle pieces and fog crawled low along the cobblestones. There, in the heart of that ancient maze, she slipped into a cathedral courtyard, found a metal grate, and dropped the chip into the underground stream. Gone. No way to trace it. No way to reach it, unless they found her mother's third lock and earned the right to open it the moment she turned. They were there, surrounding her, guns raised. She smiled. Calm. Unafraid. Unafraid. A woman stepped forward, the same one from the earlier facility. Where is it? She demanded. Gone, Amelia said softly. You're lying. Search me. They did. They found nothing. The woman screamed in frustration, stepping closer, gun shaking in her hand. Do you know what you've done? She hissed. Yes, Amelia said. I've kept the world safe. And then came the sound that changed everything. Helicopters, sirens, shouting. The courtyard flooded with operatives in tactical gear. Interpol, European defense. Private agents, loyal to Alex's old network. They swarmed in, disarmed the attackers, took control, and through it all, Amelia stood in the center of the storm, steady as stone. Alex ran to her. They met in the middle of the courtyard, soaked and breathless. You're insane, he whispered, holding her face. You married me, she said, smiling through her tears. He laughed, tired, relieved, in awe. Later, after the arrests, after the reports, after the long hours of silence, in relief, Amelia sat beneath a stained glass window, the light coloring her skin in soft reds and blues. Alex sat beside her. They'll keep coming, he said. I know. We'll never have a normal life again. We never did, she said gently. We don't even know where the third lock is. Amelia looked up at the sky and whispered, maybe that's the point. He looked at her. Maybe it's not. For us to find, she continued. Maybe it's for someone else. Someday, when the world's ready. Alex didn't answer. He just held her hand, and somewhere far away, in a mountain monastery where her mother once spent a single winter, a hidden vault waited, untouched, unknown, safe. For now.